Cool. Scott Bauer, wholesaler from Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. He is crushing right now and has been using InvestorFuse for a while. Scott, would love to hear a little bit more detailed intro on you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, Scott Bauer out of Phoenix, Arizona. Been wholesaling for the last few years, and now we're just crushing it, moving between 5 and 10 a month. And I'm still a solo entrepreneur. So, really, without the systems that we've put in place, it wouldn't be possible to do that. Yeah, I mean, what else do you want to know? Kind of how I got started, where I come from.
Yeah, absolutely. I forgot to mention the name Scott, the one-man show Bauer. But yeah, how did you get started in real estate and wholesaling specifically?
Okay, so I'm from Iowa. That's important. I live in Arizona now. I've been out here for 5 years. And back in 2013, I got my real estate license to be a realtor. Did that for about a year, a little over a year, and just crushed it. Did 2.2 million in sales my first year as a realtor, but it sucked. It was terrible. I do not like being a realtor. It's not my thing. So I joined the Real Estate Investors Association here in Phoenix, which is actually the largest one in the country. And that taught me that I could do something else to make money in real estate. So I actually listened to a guy named Dave Lindahl that came and spoke for Asbria. And he's an apartment investor. He's a syndicator, apartment mogul, owns like 7,000 units. This guy's a boss. And he got up on stage, and really that resonated a lot with me because he said, why would you want to buy one house and rent that out? Because if that house goes vacant, you have no income. When you can buy a 100-unit apartment complex or, an apartment complex and one of the units goes vacant, you're okay. It doesn't matter. It's not going to affect you nearly as much. So that clicked with me, and I hired him to be my coach, teach me how to syndicate apartment deals. And through that, I met one of his former students that lives here local in Phoenix. I won't say his name because I just don't want to throw that out there. But he had bought 350 apartment units using Lindahl's training, and he was here in Phoenix. So I had to meet him. And so I called Lindahl's office, got his phone number, and blew that guy's phone up for like 3 weeks or a month until he would finally meet with me. And when I met with him, we ended up hitting it off real well. 2.5 hours of coffee, just bouncing ideas off each other. And, one thing he said was that, apartments are great, but he had this other idea with single family houses. And he knew some people up in Salt Lake City, Utah that were crushing it, making like 90 grand a month, pushing houses. And of course, this is a much bigger market than Salt Lake City. So we said, why don't we just implement that same system here in Phoenix? It's a great idea. So I went up to Salt Lake City and job shadowed these guys for about 4 days. And they're awesome people up there. They taught me a lot in a very short amount of time. And we basically came back down to Phoenix and started to implement that. So that individual here in Phoenix that I had partnered up with at this point would pay for all the marketing, and I would do the rest. So I'd answer all the phone calls, go on all the appointments, lock up all the deals. And at the time, we didn't really have any buyers, so I'd sell all the deals as well. And did that for about 6 months with a ton of success. But I realized that this wasn't my company, and I was only making like 14% of the net number that we were making on each deal, but I was doing all the work. So just didn't make sense. And in June of 2015, I said, I'm going off my own. I'm going to go do this on my own. So that's when HBSP Holdings was really born. And at that point, I had to bite the bullet. I mean, I had to take it into my own hands and really try to use the technology that I had or that I knew of, that I had learned about through a couple other things called Real Automation Biz to help me get the process started. And that was really the beginning of my wholesaling career. And now we went from doing, 1 or 2 deals maybe every couple months to now consistently we're doing 5 to 10 every single month.
That's interesting. So you have a little bit of a education background. I mean, you did 2.2 million in residential sales as agent, but I didn't realize you had the background as an agent on the retail side. You got some mentoring on the multi-unit, which I know you're into now, and we're going to touch base on in this interview. And then you got your education on wholesaling in Utah and Arizona. So that's cool. And you're definitely focusing the whole time of what you said so far in your story. You're definitely focusing on your strengths, which is just going all in on sales and kind of being the entrepreneur, just wearing every single hat in the business. But no matter who you are, maybe if you're Elon Musk, you could do that, but he's not human. So it's hard to do that for, being a real estate entrepreneur, a wholesaling entrepreneur.
And it takes a lot out of you. I think to be a really good entrepreneur in any business, you must wear every hat and really master every part of the business so that you can go later on when you want to hire somebody to do that job. The ins and outs of that job to be able to teach them, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't wear all the hats at some point in the business, then it's not really – I don't feel that you're capable of training somebody correctly. And if they don't do the job the right way, you may not know the solution because you haven't been there to do it yourself. So that's why I've done that.
Absolutely agree with that. So when you were wholesaling with this other investor in Phoenix that you were partnering up on, and you were getting a slice of every wholesale deal that you did, what type of daily software were you using in that process? When you were taking calls, were you using maybe even Google spreadsheets, pen and paper? What type of stuff were you using, and where did you find pain points or struggle in keeping stuff organized, or what type of pain and struggles did you have doing that?
Absolutely. So we actually used Infusionsoft. Tried to use Infusionsoft. There's a part of Infusionsoft called Sixth Division, which I believe is here in Phoenix, and they kind of built this rough system that we could use to organize all of our leads. But the problem with it is that it just didn't work right. I mean, it wasn't user friendly. It was just very difficult to use, I guess, to organize all the leads, to make sure that leads didn't fall through the cracks, to make sure that we were following up on all the leads. I mean, that was really the most important part. I remember talking with this individual I was partnered up with at the time. I said, because he actually paid for it. He paid like $10,000 to get the system designed. And I remember sitting there one day in a meeting. I said, "This sucks. I mean, I don't know where all our leads are at. I don't know what I need to follow up with today. That maybe a lead that came in a month ago. I'm not sure where they're at. I could take notes within the system, but that was about it. There was no organization of those leads to make sure that nothing fell through the cracks. And it just wasn't good. And so at that time was when we switched over to Real Automation Biz. I was actually introduced to Real Automation around that time. That would have been in the end of 2014 or maybe the beginning of 2015.
Awesome. Yeah, that was my next thing. It's like you're finding out your pain points here, organization, and it seems to me like as you scale your business, that's something that just gets magnified, like losing leads or losing notes, updating notes. What was your last touch with the seller? What's the next action step you had to take with them? Stuff like that. So you were probably searching for something like, hey, how can I have my leads organized? What's good for team communication, in the future when I'm going to build my team out?
Yeah. So cool. I mean, one of the most important things is you don't want to let your leads go, you don't want to lose the lead, right? If you're paying for leads and one falls through the cracks, or let's say, you find out somebody else bought, or that lead sold their property to somebody else because you didn't follow up on them, that's like getting punched in the face. I mean, And so I just didn't want that to happen, which is why I was actively seeking a way to eliminate that problem, which we kind of found with Real Automation Biz, but there were some problems with that as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's happened. That's happened one too many times for me that I'd like to admit. So I definitely know that punch in the face feeling to look back and see that lead went with somebody else, went with another wholesaling company or another investor. So yeah, take us along the storyline here. So now you start branching off to do your own thing. You find Real Automation Biz, which was Dan's former software program, and InvestorFuse is like a very much upgraded version of that. So what were some pain points in that? Kind of take us along your journey of branching off into a solo entrepreneur and starting HBSB Holdings out.
So Real Automation was good because at this point now we'd found a way to where we can kind of organize all the leads in one spot, which is Podio. and connect some third-party services to Podio to allow for some automation on follow-up, or if I wanted to send one-off postcards, or if I wanted to, I guess some automation in that aspect. But the problem with it was that I had to have third parties involved. So I was paying for these third-party services to connect to Podio, and everything was not seamless. It did not work perfect every time. And if something wasn't right within the system in Podio, you have to communicate it with a third-party service, which may or may not have was a hassle, and you might not have been able to fix the problem. Not to mention the cost of it too. So I was paying, it was like, a couple $100 a month in third-party services that I was having to come out of pocket, which isn't a ton by any means, but it was just one more cost. Mm-hmm. And it was one more system. It just felt like, we had this central thing, Podio, which is great, but it was like there was all these other connections and all these other systems that you had to learn, because you had to learn the third-party system to make sure that if there was an issue that happened with the connection to Podio, you'd know how to fix it. And maybe if you needed support, well, then you'd either have to get support from Podio, or you have to get support from the third-party service or whatever it was, to make sure that it would work seamlessly and without effort, which is kind of the name of the game, right? I mean, we want to make sure that this all works. At least for me, it makes life a lot easier when the systems work, and you don't have to spend time working on fixing the problem just to make the system work. You need to focus your time on doing deals, getting leads, getting things, making sure you're following up with the right people, making sure that you're doing the money generating activities. That is the most important part of a business. If you don't have deals and you don't have income coming in, you have no business, period.
Absolutely. You're hitting the nail on the head there. And that's what when I talk to investors that are kind of at that stage, or earlier on in their path to getting there, they start getting, their time sucked by all these different things, like making a Podio or setting up company email. That's more, minuscule than working on Podio, but it's a time drag, and that's what you should be doing. You should be focusing on your strengths, and yours, obviously, actually negotiating, buying and selling real estate. So I know that you put a ton of time into that business, and then also, you were able to alleviate some of that time by going to real automation, and then I'd assume more going with InvestorFuse. So when you went to that point, what were the numbers like in your business, if you don't mind me asking? So when you got into real automation, in that stage you were using real automation, what would you say like your deal per month range, or like revenue per month was at that stage, or those stages, that time frame?
Let's see. It was very sporadic, really. I remember at the beginning, like so this would have been all of 2015, or no, yeah, the end of 2015, and really, yeah, the last 6 months of 2015, things were very sporadic in the sense I was making, like, some months I would make $10,000, other months I would make $5,000, other months I'd make, it was just very, very sporadic. And there were some things that had to do with that. One is just experience. I was really trying to figure the system out, as well as figure out the best, build my buyers list, figure out the best, just figure out how the systems all work, how wholesaling works, making sure that I understood that fully and completely. And it's a progression. This is not something where you go from 0 to 100,000 a month overnight. It's definitely progression, and that's how it's been for me. It's gone from, like I said, 5,000 a month. There were some months I didn't make any money, but it goes from 5,000 to 10,000. Then you figure out the system, you figure out the players that need to be involved in the system, meaning your buyers, your title company, your contractors, your appraisers, people that are just all the key components of your business. Once you have all that organized and you can figure out how to systemize getting deals done. So if you know that it takes you, so for me, 1 in 26 of my phone calls is a deal, and I know that. So I just basically make that happen. If I want to do 10 deals a month, then I got to have at least 26 times 10 is 260 phone calls coming in, right? Mm-hmm. And so if I know here in Phoenix, I get about a 0.5% response rate. So some months are better, but about 0.5%. So I know that I need to send out, at least 30,000 mailers or so per month to do 5 deals.
Mm-hmm.
But the other part about it is that there's always overlap. If you're starting this business and you know anything about marketing or you know anything about doing real estate deals, not everybody's ready to buy today. Not everybody's ready to sell today. But you have to follow up. The money is in the follow-up every single time. I've gotten so many deals because I'm still there. I'm still following up. And I've had multiple sellers tell me that, you know, somebody will reach out once and maybe they'll reach out twice or maybe even 3 times, and then that's it. Then they stop. Well, for me, unless they sell me the house, they die, in which case hopefully their relatives are going to sell me their house, or they absolutely just, you know, they aren't going to sell, I'm not going to leave them alone. And even if they're not going to sell, I'm probably still going to follow up with them. You know, put them on a 6-month drip or something where I'm going to be able to make sure that I'm top of mind for them and just stay in the front. Mm-hmm. The follow-up is huge.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny, like seeing like some like university studies, they talk about how sales, like I think it's 70 or 80% of the sales are after touch 3 and on. I think only 5% of sales are done. Universal sales are done on touch 1, 2, or 3. They're majority after touch 3. But yeah, man, that's great stuff. And the same thing. So real automation, you're really in the progression of learning your system, probably testing out different marketing, for lack of a better term, throwing some stuff against the wall, kind of seeing what's stuck, and a lot of variation in revenue there. Yeah. And it sounds like we're starting to get into the phase of where you saw InvestorFuse. And since you are a real automation guy, I assume that you just found that out through Dan and through Real Automation. He was promoting InvestorFuse. So tell me a little bit what that was like your first impressions with InvestorFuse and how your business was progressing when you first got onto that platform for your daily real estate software.
Well, I was actually really lucky because Dan reached out to me, one of the first people to reach out and said, hey, you know, I'm going to build this in-house. I'm going to make sure that all these, because he knew that there was a pain point. These third parties were kind of, you know, it was just kind of a hassle to have third parties connected to Podio. And so he reached out to me and said, hey, you know, we're going to try to bring this all in-house within Podio because I can write code, or I can find people to write code for me to be able to connect all this stuff together right within Podio. And he said, you know, do you want to be one of the beta testers for me to help me out with trying to figure out how the stuff is all going to work? So of course I said yes. And it was tough to try to build a new system, right? And to go from Real Automation that I already knew, at this point I knew how to use it, to switch over to using InvestorFuse, which you know, was a new system, and trying to figure out how to connect all the dots and still try not to lose any leads. Because in the transition, there was some leads that were lost just because of the transition period, and I don't think there was any other way to go about it. That was just part of it. But when we finally made the shift, and it's, you know, it's always evolving. That's something that, you know, nothing's perfect, but now InvestorFuse is down where I don't worry about stuff not working. Things are pretty seamless with it. I get up every day. I know what tasks need to be done. I know what tasks need to be offloaded to other people in my business. I know, you know, if somebody wants to communicate, then we all communicate through InvestorFuse. And I mean, it's pretty much run my life, which has been fantastic. You know, it's kind of eliminated a position that I would have to pay somebody for in my business because of all of the automation that InvestorFuse has to offer. What specifically, I guess, would you like to know about my system or about my business?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to talk because InvestorFuse is really focused on lead management, kind of stuff that you've been hitting the nail on the head with. So I want to talk about, and you're doing mostly direct mail marketing. I know when I was out in Arizona with Dan a few months back, you were talking about just getting like a website set up. So primarily the marketing for your business, direct mail. Take me a little bit through that A to B transaction from start to finish. So you send mail out, you get a call. What happens? Either are you answering all those calls? Does it go to Pat Live or an answering service? And then kind of like, how do you work that through the system? We've kind of talked on a little bit of those points of how most of these leads, most of these deals are from follow-ups. But take me through that process a little bit and how you work it through your workspace and InvestorFuse.
Yeah, absolutely. So every lead that comes in, I use a third-party phone service, which is CallRail, which is a fantastic service. And so every lead that comes in, you're right, I do send out direct mail. That has been proven for me to be the most profitable thing. It cost me about 55 cents per mail piece to have it shipped or to have it posted, mailed out, printed, have the letter printed, folded, stuffed, mailed out, postage included. It's about 55 cents a mail piece to throw it out there. And so, and the average deal here for me in Phoenix is about $10,000. So, I don't need to do a whole lot of deals to cover my cost of marketing every month. And I've proven that I get about a 5X model. And some months it's even better than that on the direct mail. So, my sweet spot where I've been at is about 20,000 mailers a month is what I send out. Sometimes it's a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more. This last month, I tried something new, which just tried to be more targeted, and it actually didn't work out as I thought it would. So I'm going to switch back to what I was doing before. But basically what happens is somebody gets a letter in the mail from me. They call the CallRail number that's listed on the mail piece. It goes to a voicemail. Right away. It'll ring one time, go straight to a voicemail. It says, hey, thank you for reaching out to HBSB Holdings. Please leave me your name, address, address, and a phone number. We'll be sure to get back with you real soon.
Was that every call? Excuse me for butting in. Is that every single call goes to voicemail after one ring?
Every single call.
Okay, that's interesting because the investors I talk to, either if they're InvestorFuse companies or people that are looking at InvestorFuse, whoever I talk to across the country, I've seen the logic for both of those, letting them go to voicemail where you can kind of screen those or answer everything live, and some that are kind of in between answer office hours.
Well, and I'll touch on trying to use somebody live because really it depends on your acquisitions person, who you have calling the people back. It could work both ways, but for my business, I have to have them answer, or I just have to have it go to voicemail. And really, I've had no pushback from the sellers. Maybe every once in a while, one in maybe 50 or so, I mean, very, very small, that will not leave a voicemail. And of course, it's going to come through my system anyway. So I'm going to see that missed call, and maybe they didn't leave a voicemail, so I'll call them back anyways. And I've had a few people say, oh yeah, I don't leave voicemails. Well, fine. I still am going to see, because of the way that I have the system set up, I'm going to see that they called. And so I'm going to call them back, right? Or an acquisitions person, whoever's on your team, would call them back. That would be their responsibility. So anyways, goes to a voicemail. And then I listen to the voicemail. Because they left the property address within the voicemail, I listen to the voicemail before I call them back. I type in the property information, and then I get on the tax record and even the MLS or any other information I can get on the property and try to fill out and be as knowledgeable as I can about that property before I call them back. And so I can see, how long they've owned the property, maybe what their balance, or if they own the property free and clear. If the person who called and left their, called in, left their name is the same name that's listed on the tax record as the owner, meaning that maybe it could be a relative or family member. Maybe I can know right away that, maybe they've owned the house for 30 years and a different name called than what's on the tax record, meaning that the owner probably is deceased, probably, could have died, and maybe somebody inherited that property. Just, that's all good information to have. And so I'll get all that information before I call them back. And then when I call them back, I just figure out, their situation. One, I try to be very, very, very understanding on the phone and not salesy at all. They called me. They got a letter in the mail. They went out to their mailbox. They picked up the letter out of the mailbox. They opened up the letter. They read it. Then they picked up the phone and they called me. They're kind of motivated, because who does that anymore, right? So call them back, figure out what their situation is. And I could tell pretty quick whether they're motivated or kind of what, where they're at in the process. If they're just calling me because they've got 7 letters in the mail from me and finally they want me to stop sending a mail, or they want just an idea of what their house is worth or whatever it is, they called. And so I will type in their information. And at that point, once I know their motivation, I'll try to set the appointment. Because ultimately, I found, at least for my strength, I do the best when I get in front of somebody. if I go on an appointment with a possible seller that's motivated, I'm going to get the deal because I just try to be very understanding with them and try to make sure I listen to what their pain point is, what their problem is, and then try to solve it in any way that could be. It's not always that I just buy the house for cash. Could be a lease option, could be a seller finance deal. There's one family that I met with a year ago, and they have 50 properties, and they're elderly, and so we've taken a few of them down on seller financing, and they're open to do that. 5% financing. It's fantastic. 10% down, 5% financing for 5 years. I mean, you can't beat that, right?
Absolutely.
So go on the appointment, hopefully lock up the deal. And if we lock up the deal, then it's very, very simple. Either depending on their age, some sellers are elderly. They don't even use computers. So you got to take a physical copy with them. But once it's signed and I get it back to the office, I will scan it, and then everything goes basically into InvestorFuse from there. So I will move the contract into an accepted contract scenario. There's a button within my system, which actually I guess I can show people.
Sure.
And kind of break down what my seller lead looks like because it's okay. So this actual lead, I haven't talked to this guy, but this could be a really good one if I can finally get him on the phone today. But anyways, once it isn't accepted, let's say I go on the appointment and everything's good and he signs the contract and we're good to go. Well, for me, I just go into offer accepted, push transactions, click the button, and then it's automatically going to push it over to my transaction. Okay, so I go in here. I know right away my stage of lead will go up to under contract right here. We'll go to under contract. I go into the transaction and I'll put in all the information. When that was accepted, when the close of escrow is, property information, photos. Always take photos of every property. So I use Google Photos. So I'll just put the photo link in there. Works out great. Title company, all the pertinent information. That way we know, and anybody else in the business or in my organization needs to look at it, can see where we are at in the process.
Absolutely.
And then once it goes from there, you just send it over to the title company and kind of get the ball rolling. I mean, it's pretty simple from there. I have my handful of people that I will call or already know that I have it sold before I go on the appointment. So, as far as the checklist goes here, a lot of times, it's I already know that it's sold before I even buy it. So that's a good feeling to have. But if I didn't have that and I had a checklist, I can always go through and check this stuff off to make sure that I cover all the bases. And then we got to close. And technology today, I don't even go to the title company anymore to close. Everything's done electronically. I get stuff wired right into the account. It's good to go.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And it seems like you're definitely leveraging your personal strengths along with some hacks there. I love how you go into the tax records before even calling the person. And probably, on average, they're probably talking to maybe 5 or 6 other wholesalers or investors if they're getting direct mail, if they're on a certain list that's getting hit. So if you're able to really be perceptive and listen to that person on top of going through the tax records and just having the most information on that property and seller, more so than any of the other 5 or 6 on average people that they're talking to, you're putting yourself in an advantage. And then you have all the systems set up with CallRail where it's tracking what marketing campaign it came through. It's tracking the voicemail. Do you have any voicemails on the seller leads? Because I want to show you how it attaches.
Yeah.
Or I want to show how it attaches right within a seller lead there. Nice and convenient. But yeah, man, you have all the systems in place, software-wise and strategy and real estate knowledge-wise. So yeah, it captures right there in the communication log, which is super helpful. And also you're leveraging your time too. If you had to sit there and be a slave to the phone and listen to it 24/7, that's going to kill your time. If you're a one-man show transitioning into a company, that's going to kill some of your time. So you're using a bunch of hacks with the same principle and kind of leveraging them all together, putting them all together in one place. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
And that link just takes you right to CallRail. So moving forward now, like you're established now, what would you say? And I know wholesaling, the business we're in, is can be sporadic with months and stuff like that. But share with us what type of numbers you're doing revenue-wise for your business now and how successful you've become, these last couple of years here.
Yeah. So, we really go, like I said, between 5 and 10 deals a month. So this month that we're in, April, we've closed 5 this month, which has been good. I think the revenue on it's somewhere around 75,000 or so this month. There was one big one in there that we got, but I push out, it costs me 12 to 15 grand a month or so in marketing costs. And so if I can 5X that model every single month, I mean, it's a good time. The end of last year, we had a couple of 10 deals a month, which were over 100,000 a month, which I mean, is fantastic. We've almost made this year. So I know it's just over first quarter, but I'm just over 200,000 in revenue so far this year, or close to it, as far as closed revenue goes. So it's pretty good, for a one-man show. I like it, it's working.
Absolutely, man. Like I said, you're leveraging the hell out of the software, your personal skills, real estate knowledge that you've got from mentors, which is always important. So you're kind of just getting the most out of everything that you have and everything that's been provided with you. So definitely applaud you on that. Moving forward here, where do you see yourself moving forward? And you mentioned like 5Xing that revenue, the 10K average deal, 5 to 10 deals a month. Where do you see yourself moving forward now? Because I know you have the wholesaling knowledge. I know that you had a multi-unit mentor. I know that you have the retail realtor or agent experience. Where do you see yourself moving forward now as kind of like, manning or managing a team, and how it will be in your daily software?
Absolutely. So there's 2 different parts of my business that are going to really take off. One is kind of firing myself out of the day-to-day activities within my wholesale business. This model isn't going to go away. It's been around for a long time. There are always people that are, in a situation where they need to sell, and that's where I could come to the rescue for them. And so I don't want to leave that, but I need to replace myself as an acquisitions guy. I need to really hiring an assistant who handles the back end stuff, making sure they're managing all the contracts, making sure that the buyers are being contacted, making sure, well, I guess not even that, because that'd be more of a dispositions person, but just putting different key players into my business to replace myself on the wholesale side so that I could spend more time on the multifamily acquisition side. Because from a long-term wealth creation standpoint, that's where a lot of the money for my future family really is going to be held, is in the large multifamily acquisitions. So currently, right now, today, I have a 196 unit apartment complex in Texas, just outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth market, or it's within the markets in Richardson, that I'm focusing on, and I'm actively raising capital for right now. But and that's going to be my first large multifamily. The way that I got into that is through a coach and a mentor of mine. He's he's not Dave Lindahl. It's another guy named Joe Fairless that's just been, he's a multifamily mogul in and of itself. And so he brought me into another deal, and he's allowing me to get into the multifamily side. The problem is if I didn't have some systems set up for the wholesale side to continually following up with people, that would probably get left to the side, and I wouldn't be able to focus on that at all. But because the system's still running, all my follow-up sequences within InvestorFuse are still running and still touching my leads, I could spend more time on the multifamily acquisition or trying to raise money for that. Now, I still need to implement more of like an admin or assistant type of role. I need to put that in my business, and it would make things a lot easier. And I'm actively doing that now. It's just that takes a little bit of time for training and just for the system and all that. And so in the future, where I see it is I have a wholesale business that runs where I have marketing that goes out constantly every single month. I have an acquisitions guy that handles all the leads, and I have an admin or somebody that is kind of like the backbone that handles all the stuff that the acquisitions guy doesn't do. And then I have a multifamily syndication model as well, where we're actively syndicating multifamily deals with other investors, and we're all sharing in the profits. I mean, that is the goal. And within the next 12 to 18 months, that will be in effect.
Very cool, man. Great information. And if you could talk to people as we close off here, if you could talk to people, either new wholesalers or maybe wholesalers that are at one deal a month, something like that, what would you say is the best advice you could give someone if you were to mentor people that are, maybe looking for systems or trying to improve their process, maybe not even looking for a CRM necessarily, but what's something you think that would help wholesalers that are trying to scale their business up or even get their business up and running off the ground?
Okay, so this is a really important question that I know that I've struggled with, and every investor out there is going to struggle a little bit in the real estate space, because that's what I know. It's called the shiny object syndrome, right? It's squirrel. You don't, there's so many different ways you can skin a cat in real estate to make money. And it's very, very, very important that you focus on what you know works and only go there. So for me, wholesaling, it works. I know the system. I know how it works. And so I'm focused on the single family wholesale model. I could be a single family lease option guy where that's all I do is lease options. Or I could be a seller finance guy 100% of the time, and that's all I do. Or I could be a fix and flipper where, I'm fixing up a house and selling it. I don't choose to do that. And it's really important as a new investor or even a seasoned investor that maybe is not doing the deals that they want to do is pick one and blow that up. Become the master at that. Become the person that knows everything about that specific model, and you will be successful. I mean, this is something that has been around for ever, right? Real estate's been around forever. Wholesaling's been around for a long time. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. So pick one, focus on it, and really just blow it up. Become the absolute best, and try to become better than all your competition, and definitely know all your competition within that market, right? So I know Sean Terry, I know Justin Colby, I know Gabe Ostrovsky, I know all these different guys that are players in this industry, because even at on the wholesale model, if I can't sell something, I'll go to them and say, hey, can you sell it for me? Let's go wholesale something. And it works. So that would be my one nugget of information that I would push for new and seasoned investors. Pick one and blow that one up.
Awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. You kind of do that for your real estate process or transaction, the wholesale model, and then you've also kind of done that for your marketing. You've kind of mastered in on the number that for direct mail, where how many pieces you're sending on about a month. You're sending about 20K pieces per month. Your response rate's going to be around 50 or 0.5, 0.6 of a percentage point. What lists work. You test with some. So you're kind of mastering that, and you're kind of doing both the same thing. You kind of mastered the wholesale, and now you're trying to put systems like InvestorFuse and an admin and acquisitions person in place for that. And now you're starting to move on to the multi-unit. And then marketing-wise, you have the direct mail in place, and now you're starting to move into the online presence, which is obviously becoming a huge thing. And if you can get ahead of that curve now, the online presence, you're setting yourself up for years of success in the future.
I think that also because I hired a marketing so I have some people in my business, right? So I hired a marketing manager who's a Google partner, and she's great. It's just that there's a lot of competition in the Phoenix market on Google AdWords, and there's some behemoths in this market that can spend a lot more money than I'm willing to spend on Google AdWords. And so I'm touching on that now. I'm definitely online. We have some Google AdWords that are going, some campaigns that are going, just to kind of test it and make sure that I'm out there, because the way that Google ranks and all the rankings and stuff, the longer that you're there, the better ranked you're going to be. And so, but I found that my bread and butter is direct mail. So I'm not trying to go and break into this new thing, even though maybe profitable for some, and in some markets it might be very profitable to do direct mail or do pay-per-click and Google AdWords, stuff like that. Here in this market where I'm at, for me, it hasn't shown to be as profitable. So I'm focused on direct mail. I'm not going to stop direct mail, especially being in an area with so many people over the age of 65 and over the age that are older. There's a lot of opportunity for direct mail here in Phoenix still, even if there's a lot of people that are sending direct mail. I mean, that doesn't really that doesn't matter, because there are a lot of people that have just tried to get into the market, and there's enough to go around for everybody. So you're right. I focused on, I know direct mail works, so I hit that and I blew that up. I know wholesaling works, so I hit that and I blew that up and continue to do so. Now, there is some transition because, like I said, I'm moving into the multifamily sector, but that doesn't mean that I'm letting my wholesale business go away and that I'm not still laser focused on blowing up wholesaling and blowing up direct mail to make sure that those numbers still continue to work. I mean, that's where I'm at.
Absolutely. And I think that leads into a good point too, because Phoenix and Arizona in general, from my experience working with clients and companies, that has to be one of the most competitive markets. There's so many successful wholesalers out there. And when there are big players out there like Sean Terry that, can throw all this money into Google PPC and can throw money into direct mail, what can you do to compete with that and still, generate 6 figures per month? And when you have your systems and processes in place, that's how you're able to compete and get the most bang for your buck out of the leads that you're paying for. You're able to squeeze out everything that you're putting out in your marketing budget. You're able to get that back with deals closed by being able to follow up with leads, stay on top of leads, capture all the leads first. I mean, that's the first thing with the CRM. You need to be able to capture the leads. So you got to go call rail. That works best with Podio, and you have everything coming in. Seems very nicely into InvestorFuse with the voicemail, and you're able to do your thing, like you mentioned earlier in the call with your A to B, where you're looking up the tax records, being diligent and super perceptive and understanding when working these sellers. So definitely applaud you with that. Scott, thank you very much for coming on, man, and really looking forward to your continued success. I think action steps for us, as far as me being your customer success manager, I think we're going to build out some more follow-up sequences and just do some Q2 strategy and implementation for how we can even get your systems more in tune and get this cranking out at an even better pace for you.
Yeah, man, for sure. Be awesome. That's really all that's needed. Just a little tweak here and there and gonna blow it up, man.
Absolutely, man. All right, well, we'll chat soon. Thank you again for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Bye.
See ya.